Tonight on 24, once again, Trump's 180-degree turn. He says he's canceled tonight's planned attacks against Iran. The U.S. president, an hour after threatening Iran militarily, said negotiations with Tehran are successfully in their final stages. Continued strong reactions in Tehran to earlier U.S. military threats, Kalibov says a wrong strategy will blow up energy infrastructure and markets. And the start of the world's biggest football event in Mexico. The 2026 World Cup kicks off with 2 matches.
From Iran International's studio, this is 24 with Fardad Farahzad.
Good evening to Iran International viewers. Donald Trump announced he canceled tonight's planned attacks against Iran after confirming high-level talks with the Islamic Republic's leadership. He stated the time and place for signing an agreement will be announced soon. This decision follows previous threats by the U.S. president, who had warned Iran would face severe attacks and that the U.S. would seize Khark Island amidst ongoing U.S. Islamic Republic tensions. Trump's reversal indicates a potential shift in the escalating situation. However, an hour later, he said he wasn't sure if the U.S. was currently ready to do so. We're joined by our correspondents, Samira Karai from the White House and Ardavan Ruzbeh from our other studio in Washington. Samira, I wasn't surprised, and I know you probably weren't surprised either, neither by Mr. Trump's first message nor by his current message, which is 180 degrees different from that one. I think, by now, at least Iranians are pretty familiar with how many contradictory statements Mr. Trump has made about war.
And we've constantly had ups and downs, the zigzags Mr. Trump was making. And what he wrote this morning about Kharg Island, it was like he intended to bring all tensions to their maximum, to their highest point in less than 24 hours. Of course, the point, that was here today, Fardad, that kind of surprised us a bit, was this new post of his where he said he'd canceled and called off everything. It was that there were a lot of cars parked here in front of the White House, all belonging to the highest-ranking members of Mr. Trump's cabinet. Mr. Haxis and General Denkin had been here since the morning, and when they left, they departed the White House half an hour before your program started, and that was after Mr. Trump's post about canceling the attacks had been published. They had been here since the morning. I saw their departure from here myself. Besides Mr. Haxis and General Denkin, other individuals were also present. Both Mr. Vance and Mr. Rubio also had their cars parked here. I mean, they were holding continuous meetings here today at a White House, and it showed the seriousness. It showed how tense this atmosphere was. Mr. Trump, when he published that post on social media this morning, he mentioned that he would carry out heavy attacks tonight. In fact, it had 2 parts. One was the heavy attacks on Thursday night Tehran time, and the other was that we would take Kharg in the not-too-distant future. Earlier, in the past 24 hours, he had also talked about taking over Iran's oil, taking over its energy, about how if they destroy everything, the United States could step in for reconstruction, take half the oil, and do the reconstruction. Mr. Trump had made a lot of these kinds of statements in the past 24 hours, and then there were discussions about whether they were militarily ready or not. He came on Fox, spoke with the Fox News channel, Fox and Friends, and on that show, he said he didn't want to send ground troops. Then he said, well, maybe it could be done with special forces. On the other hand, there's the notable movement and transit of the small aircraft carrier, the USS Boxer. This vessel has departed from its port in Singapore and is now actively heading west. Of course, despite its ongoing voyage, it's important to emphasize that the USS Boxer is not yet anywhere close to reaching the Middle East or the broader region. It has been confirmed through today's inquiries that the carrier commenced its westward journey approximately 2 or 3 days ago, having recently left its previous location. 2 small aircraft carriers, distinct from the larger Lincoln class, including the Portland, have also joined the fleet's deployment. These carriers are also equipped with specialized elite forces, specifically trained to assist in island occupation scenarios. All these crucial developments were actively underway. Informed American sources confirmed to CNN today that the strategy for Khark Island's capture had been under consideration for a considerable time. Though thoroughly discussed, its inherently high-risk nature meant it was deliberately reserved for the decisive final stage of the operation. Fundamentally, if they decide to sever the Islamic Republic's financial lifeline through robust sanctions on oil exports or banking, for instance, the expectation is this would swiftly incapacitate the regime. Such an economic blow would bring the Islamic Republic to its knees, leading to bankruptcy quickly and forcing it to yield to demands. Yet this entire course of action, or any immediate decisive move, has abruptly halted. General Dunford has departed the White House, and President Trump explicitly stated tonight's expected attack would not take place. He affirmed an agreement has been reached, encompassing precise details and broader general terms. And all parties, from Jordan to Pakistan, Qatar, Turkey, the UAE, and Egypt. Mr. Trump listed all the Middle Eastern countries in his writing. Everyone agrees. The time and place for signing will also be announced later. This is the final position Mr. Trump has taken, effective tomorrow.
And before these statements from Mr. Trump, I'm constantly monitoring, and Iranian officials haven't shown any official reaction yet. But before this change of direction from Mr. Trump, we had heard strong reactions from Iranian officials, saying they would escalate the war to other stages, and had even brought up threats like targeting Elon Musk's interests.
I think the most profoundly golden statement was made by Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the esteemed speaker of the Iranian parliament, who said, "You will see a different Iran." In fact, the critical discussion is about the recent attacks of the past 2 days and the imminent threat of a third attack, which was actually on the table today and was supposed to start in an hour or so, Washington, D.C. time. It was, in fact, bringing up several complex and different points. One was the issue of Kharg, which, we had heard about in rumors or informal discussions, but no one had officially brought it up like this. And for the Islamic Republic, this was a very complex and dangerous issue. Reactions in Iran, for this very reason, from Ghalibaf and also Fars news agency, emphasized that they would target objectives that would impact the world. They took the discussion in a different direction. The reality is that Ghalibaf's statements regarding this issue emphasize that he's not actually targeting the geopolitics of the region, but rather bringing up the issue of economics and energy carriers. In my opinion, Mr. Ghalibaf, definitely knows the weak point of the whole situation. Anxiety and concern about a crisis in economic markets and energy carrier markets are the biggest worries for Mr. Trump, and it seems Ghalibaf has brought up this issue for that very reason. And the more important thing is that now, practically, they're going further and trying to involve various economic groups in this whole situation. Among these issues is the discussion of targeting objectives related to Elon Musk's group of companies. CNBC, in a report, specifically says that such targets could be very extensive. Because the Iranian side is emphasizing that the planning, the systems, the monitoring systems, the GPS, all of this is done through satellites operated by Elon Musk's companies. And since each of these is in a way involved in attacks inside Iran, they can therefore be considered legitimate military targets. Well, this becomes a huge scope, creating insecurity even in Elon Musk's economic markets, whose company is, soon going to enter the stock market, and something like this has even generated reactive discussions in the stock market. The Iranian side's primary concern appears to be their inability to adequately retaliate or compensate on the battlefield for a significant attack the United States might launch. This military imbalance underpins their strategy. Consequently, the Islamic Republic's policy is to deliberately create insecurity in other crucial global circles by disrupting vital energy markets and targeting oil tankers. These actions aim to generate widespread economic concern, pressuring the international community to intervene and prevent aggressive action by Mr. Trump's administration. Now, it seems with this message from Mr. Trump, though I only saw something from a domestic news agency that wrote that Tehran denies it, Fars news agency, I was just looking, wrote that it spoke with a source close to the negotiation team. No agreement has been reached, Tehran hasn't gotten any results, and it doesn't want to back down from its positions either.
Thank you, colleagues Marta von Rusbe, Washington Studio, and Samira Garai, White House, for joining us. Behnam Talablu, Senior Fellow for the Iran Program at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, joined us from Washington. Mr. Talablu, I know this is a very difficult question, but how do you read between the lines of Mr. Trump's statements? I mean, such a difference from just a few hours ago until now is really astonishing for a lot of people. Let me also mention that in the past few minutes, Fars news agency has now claimed that Iran hasn't approved any text for an agreement. This contradicts Mr. Trump's claim that Iran's top leadership approved the initial agreement. It's unclear what his true stance is, what he seeks, whether an agreement was reached, or if war is now a covert threat. What's truly happening?
Thanks for having me for DogCon. You've asked that key question again, and my reference will be to Donald Trump's track record in the first year of his second term. In the first year, in like the last 9 or 10 months of Trump's second term presidency, we saw that he was willing to take America's political and national security strategy, regarding his own foreign policy and what he wants from the Islamic Republic of Iran, from maximum pressure to negotiations to bombing to political support for Europe and the UN. So, that familiar and frequently repeated phrase, which you, dear viewers, and I have emphasized countless times, remains absolutely critical. Not only are all possible options, including diplomatic engagement and strategic deterrence, firmly on the table concerning America and the Islamic Republic of Iran, but simultaneously, the United States is actively pursuing both paths. Consequently, as much as Donald Trump might serve as the chief negotiator or lead the American delegation, he will concurrently and crucially act as the commander-in-chief. So, for example, that economic blockade through the US naval group is still in the region. It's still yielding economic results. The maximum pressure sanctions are still there. But at the same time, these kinds of negotiations are also moving forward. In other words, there's a political push and pull, or tighten and loosen approach in the White House that's looking to figure out how to get the biggest gain in the shortest time and with the least political, financial, and economic cost regarding its own policy and what the Islamic Republic of Iran is willing to give. So Donald Trump has put both friends and enemies in one place right now, and that's in the impasse of his next tweet or text or speech.
He says that this agreement text, the details of the agreement, has been approved by the United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Turkey, Pakistan, Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Egypt, and others. It's a bit strange that he'd want to bring these countries into the game too, and for his claim that they've reached some sort of agreement to be completely false. Do you think it's possible that with the cooperation of regional countries and a potential agreement with Israel, a general text has really been prepared that Tehran has given a green light to?
It's not clear if it's a whole text, but there's no doubt there's a political framework, something, a bit less substantial than a memorandum of understanding, that we can call it, where every time, for example, Steve Croft, Donald Trump's senior advisor, picks up the phone and consults with these countries, or the presidencies of these countries, or the emirs of these countries, or the prime ministers of these countries talk with the White House. There's no doubt that they're talking about what America has achieved through the negotiating table, and how the rest of America's forces in the region will take shape after operations, after war. There's no doubt they're talking about these things, So it's not that strange in that sense, but as for how much truth there is to the opposing side, meaning the Islamic Republic of Iran, currently denying this news, I'm a bit pessimistic about that, meaning maybe the US government is, exaggerating a bit about that understanding or that political framework. And it's good that, for example, it has shared this and consulted with its traditional friends, America's traditional supporters in the region. The party that still needs to formally accept this text is the Islamic Republic. Crucially, the government itself has not yet confirmed its details or even acknowledged its existence through any official or unofficial diplomatic channels. Furthermore, there has been no validation on social media or in their prominent state-run media. Therefore, we must patiently wait and carefully observe what the final, definitive response of the Islamic Republic will be, assuming America has indeed presented and meticulously prepared this text. We must await their official word.
Because the game doesn't seem to be over yet. One doesn't know whether to attribute Mr. Trump's contradictory statements 100% to disorganization and instability, and not knowing what he wants to do, or if it's really another grand strategy, a good cop, bad cop routine, playing Iran. Because the game is still ongoing, I guess it's hard to describe this. Considering the Iranian side's denials, particularly from a news agency close to the Revolutionary Guard, do you think this could be part of a strategic game? Is there a possibility this is psychological warfare aimed at Tehran?
There's no doubt that overall, Donald Trump is deeply interested in and strongly believes in psychological warfare, and he has tried several times to implement this strategy against the Islamic Republic, aiming to influence their behavior. But from another angle, we also have to look at how, since his campaign before the first term, meaning since 2015, he had consistently identified himself as a prominent deal-maker in the political arena. He has always sought to significantly increase America's bargaining power against both friends and enemies on the international stage. So it's possible that both parts of your question are true, meaning it's both part of a calculated plan and, for example, depends on personal desires and interests and that particular moment.
Thanks to Behnam Talalu, Senior Fellow, Iran Program, Foundation for Defense of Democracies, D.C. Regarding America's plan to seize Kharg Island, CNN, in a report citing Pentagon officials, said that plans to seize this island have been under consideration by the U.S. military for months. But due to the very high risk and the possibility of heavy ground troop casualties, they have been put aside so far. The report states that, in the view of the Pentagon and the White House, controlling Kharg Island and its oil infrastructure could severely weaken the Islamic Republic's economic power and change the course of the war. But at the same time, it's been assessed as one of the riskiest military scenarios. But simultaneously with the IRGC Navy's news about an attack on 2 ships in the Strait of Hormuz, and its emphasis that this waterway is closed to all vessels, U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, announced on its X account by publishing an image that the Strait of Hormuz is still open for commercial ships to pass through, and hundreds of vessels have transited this route in the past 2 months. According to this entity, American forces are deployed in the region to counter what it calls Iran's aggressive actions.
Farzeen Nadimi, a senior research fellow for Defense and Security Affairs, joined us. Mr. Nadimi, it seems that neither the Iranian side nor CENTCOM is telling the whole truth, if we don't say they're lying, because it appears that neither is the blockade being fully enforced, nor is it the case that ships are passing through very easily. Yes, the Strait of Hormuz is about 21 nautical miles wide at its narrowest point. Within these critical 21 miles, there are actually 3 vital shipping lanes right now. One dedicated shipping lane runs very close to the Omani coast. Another crucial international shipping lane is located in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz, entirely within Omani waters, facilitating significant global maritime traffic. And now, a third maritime route Iran has established within its sovereign regional waters, extending both north and south of Khark Island. In that northern part, Iran asserts considerable control, and IRGC fastboats operate with significant freedom of action. Consequently, ships using this route at Iran's request fall directly under Iran's comprehensive supervision, solidifying its regional maritime influence. But in other places, there's no supervision from the IRGC Navy. They can only, if they ever want to, forcibly stop the movement of ships in the southern route from Oman's coastal waters, or in the international route, using drones, using shore-to-sea missiles, or by firing from fast boats. Otherwise, Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz in this regard is completely relative. Conversely, the U.S. Navy maintains an almost complete command of the crucial maritime blockade line positioned just beyond the Strait of Hormuz, encompassing a significant area of the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. Given the Navy's advanced surveillance and persistent presence, it is exceedingly uncommon for vessels to successfully navigate the western route, potentially hugging Oman's coastal waters by simply deactivating their AIS transponders without detection. The effectiveness of their monitoring capabilities in this strategic region is unparalleled. It's happened very rarely. Most of the time, these ships are either stopped by the US Navy or turned back from their course. Or if they do pass, after a while in the Indian Ocean, they catch up to them and then they subject them to inspection, change their route, or seize them. As a result, it can be said that to some extent, the US Navy has more control here due to the complete control it has in its blockade line. This capability allows them to conduct intricate maneuvers from the strategic maritime waters off Oman. They effectively supervise ships remotely, utilizing advanced Apache helicopters for aerial reconnaissance, complemented by unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, for persistent surveillance, and unmanned surface vessels, USVs, for close observation. Moreover, they are adept at remotely controlling their own destroyers to facilitate and oversee the passage of other vessels under their direct supervision. It is crucial to acknowledge that the IRGC's operational capacity is far from completely tied. Whenever they discern an opportunity and possess the strategic will, they can indeed carry out attacks, especially leveraging their drone fleets, which have, in some documented cases, successfully struck ships and caused significant damage. Naturally, the control of both in the Strait of Hormuz region is relative, but America's control over shipping and the movement of ships throughout the entire region is almost complete.
How much does this claim that we want to occupy Kharg, or Kharg, really align with reality, Mr. Nadimi? Because right now we see the Islamic Republic attacking Kuwait, Bahrain, and the UAE, Qatar, and these are other countries that, after all, can create political tension and might lead to their response. If the Americans really want to take Kharg, which is right next to Bushehr and Ganave port, well, what limitations does Iran have then? It can just bomb the place continuously. Is such an event really feasible in the current situation?
The US military has vast capabilities, allowing it to significantly impact Khark Island's functionality. While the island is almost out of commission and has no exports, the US military can still have a profound military impact. Primarily, it can seriously damage Kharg's oil production and export facilities. This would put them completely out of commission for an extended period, greatly exceeding their current state of disuse in terms of seizing the island. In my opinion, occupying Khark Island would have absolutely no significant military or even lasting economic impact. This is fundamentally because Khark Island functions solely as a specialized storage and loading center for crude oil, not a strategic military base or processing facility. The crude is gathered from numerous oil fields deep within Iran's interior. Crucially, its vital initial processing, where sulfur and other impurities are meticulously separated, occurs at dedicated production centers on the mainland. This treated crude is then propelled with pressure systematically boosted through multiple pumping stations until it reaches the Ghoreh pumping station, situated on Iranian soil just north of Khark Island. The entire foundational infrastructure remains firmly on the mainland. And from the numerous inland oil fields, an intricate network of pipelines channels crude oil to the critical Ghoreh pumping station where pressure is boosted. These pipelines then extend to the strategically located Ganave manifold, situated directly on the seashore, serving as a key collection and distribution hub. From Ganave, the oil enters the Persian Gulf via massive 56-inch underwater pipelines, ultimately reaching Kharg Island. Here, it undergoes essential processes of storage and stabilization for quality assurance, before being transferred to large oil tankers at a TGT terminal in the east and Azarqat in the west for global distribution. But if we assume Kharg Island is captured by the US, the very first action Iran would take is to immediately cut off the transfer of crude oil. This would involve shutting down the pipelines supplying oil from the Ghoreh pumping station and the Ganave manifold directly to Kharg. Consequently, Kharg Island would then be left completely without any oil supply. Economically, the endeavor proves entirely ineffective, failing to yield any substantial advantage. Although a few offshore oil fields near Kharg transfer their crude for export, their output output is negligible. This modest contribution from the continental shelf pales significantly when compared to the vast quantities of oil extracted from mainland Iran, rendering its economic impact almost imperceptible. Consequently, control of Kharg will inevitably transform from a perceived asset into a significant liability. The immense logistical and security demands needed to maintain the island and its operations will become a persistent and costly burden. How they're going to defend this island? Probably Iran's missiles and drones will be launched from a short distance from Iranian soil, from Khark Island, from the direction of Bushehr towards this island, and problems, and also FPV drones, whose range now reaches from Iran to Khark Island, can create many problems for the forces stationed on this relatively small island, an island that sits on a large amount of oil weirs, and also oil facilities that still contain some oil. In any case, missile and bomb impacts can cause explosions and fires. Capturing this island isn't strategically logical or practically viable unless part of a much broader military operation to seize all of Iran and eliminate the Islamic regime. By itself, it has no effect and causes problems.
Thank you. Farzeen Nadimi, Senior Research Fellow for Defense and Security Affairs at the Washington Institute. Before Donald Trump spoke of progress in negotiations with Iran, a number of lawmakers in the U.S. Congress, including several prominent Republican senators, emphasized their support for the White House's decision to potentially attack Iran. Senator Rick Scott, in response to a question from my colleague Marzia Hosseini, said Trump has tried all options regarding Tehran and now practically has no choice but to destroy the IRGC, and military action, in his belief, is the only remaining solution.
I sense the president is truly tired, having exhaustively explored every single avenue for diplomatic engagement. He genuinely offered every opportunity for a peaceful resolution. Therefore, my personal conviction is that we are left with no viable alternative but to commit completely to destroying the Revolutionary Guard. I commend the president for initially pursuing diplomacy, and I also appreciate his decisive actions, particularly in the Strait of Hormuz. Ultimately, I firmly believe it's imperative to proceed with dismantling the revolutionary government of Iran.
I believe we're going to have to go destroy the Iranian Revolutionary Guard.
My colleague Marzia Hosseini joins us from Congress. Marzia, I guess Mr. Trump's political allies in Congress are also confused, because one moment they react to something he says, which he then contradicts himself a few hours later.
Interviewing Mr. Rick Scott was tough due to a complicated situation. I stood alongside Fox News and CNN reporters. Scott adjusted his tone for my Iranian audience, then turned to Fox News to explain to the American audience before turning back again. This constant audience-specific adjustment in tone and explanation made the interview challenging. For example, what he said was, if you ask me, I'd say negotiations and all that. It was good that they haven't. It was good we negotiated. It was good we imposed sanctions. But the ultimate solution is to eliminate the Islamic Republic. This Mr. Scott, perhaps after Mr. Graham, is the second person in the U.S. Congress who has very strong anti-Islamic Republic stances. And in his interviews, he doesn't refer to destroying the Islamic Republic's nuclear program. He refers to the Islamic Republic itself and emphasizes, saying, if you ask me, we ultimately have to do this. Ultimately, we have to go and eliminate the Islamic Republic, and the only way is war. I interviewed 4 senators in total here today in Congress on critical foreign policy matters. 1 Democrat, Senator Gary Peters from Michigan, and 3 others were Republicans. We had also viewed Senator Rick Scott's interview. I spoke directly with Senator Mike Rounds, a Republican from South Dakota, Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, and Senator Scott. During these discussions, Senator Johnson's critical point was this. He highlighted that since Bill Clinton, all U.S. presidents have unanimously declared the Islamic Republic must be prevented from acquiring nuclear weapons, but none truly demonstrated the courage to achieve it. Not only did they not have the courage, but people like Biden and Obama came and provided billions of dollars to the Islamic Republic. And that's why we are now in a situation where we actually have to go this far through war against the Islamic Republic and defend ourselves, he emphasized, then turned back to the CNN and Fox News reporters and said the reason we're doing this is because the Islamic Republic wants to start these electromagnetic attacks against the US, which I had to go search to understand what he meant by that. He was referring
referring to a high-yield nuclear bomb that would disable the U.S. government's electrical system. And he said, because these attacks are going to happen to the U.S., this narrative that we know Republicans heavily focus on, we are forced to use all available tools for military attacks and regime change in Iran. And two other senators. So let's go watch part of the interviews and then come back.
Again, I view Iran with a nuclear weapon as an existential threat.
Yes, well, again, I personally consider a nuclear-armed Iran an existential threat to the U.S. All U.S. presidents, from Bill Clinton until today, have said that America cannot allow Iran to become a nuclear power. However, none of them did anything about it. Instead, Obama and Biden sent billions of dollars to Iran to strengthen the regime. That's also why Donald Trump had to make a tough decision. He wants to prevent an accidental attack and threat against the U.S., and achieving that goal isn't easy. I think if we look to the future, we can eventually cast these Ayatollahs and their oppressive, destabilizing regime into the dustbin of history. Just imagine the profound positive impact their absence would mean for global peace and stability, especially in the Middle East. For my part, I sincerely hope President Trump succeeds in this vital effort. Unlike many, both among his Democratic colleagues and media folks, who seem to wish for Trump's failure, I too hope he eventually succeeds.
Failure. I hope President Trump...
To the UFC fight on Saturday.
Don't intend to find a peaceful...
For a long time, he patiently pursued diplomacy to resolve the issue with the regime. However, his patience has now run out. He's concluded they truly don't intend to reach a peaceful solution, an outcome he had anticipated from the start. Clearly and explicitly, he's now stating that either they come to the negotiating table or he will be forced to deal with this in a different way.
Another senator I spoke with, Senator Peters, although his positions were different as a Democrat, he too again emphasized ending this conflict through negotiation and said this war can't go on any longer than this. And finally, Senator Lindsey Graham also posted something today and emphasized that the issue of attacking Kharg Island and taking over Kharg Island could actually completely change the equation, and that's the ultimate solution to this war, a recommendation to Trump.
Thank you, Marzia Husseini, my colleague from the U.S. Congress. The National Solidarity Group for Iran has called for a human chain in Washington, continuing the Saturday protest gatherings in the U.S. According to this call, this gathering will be held at the Memorial for the Killed and Deceased, and simultaneously in support of the freedom of political prisoners and in opposition to executions. Siamak Aram, political analyst and lecturer at Harrisburg University and coordinator of this gathering, is with us from Washington. Mr. Aram, you've been holding such gatherings, especially on Saturdays, for a long time, particularly since the Woman Life Freedom Movement. What achievements have there been so far, and what do you hope this recent gathering will achieve?
This will be almost the 23rd consecutive week now that Iranians in the Washington, D.C. area have been present in various forms in different parts of the city. The National Solidarity Organization for Iran's effort has also been that it shouldn't just be a street demonstration or a blind, aimless presence. And every, presence has been tried to be designed appropriately based on the events that are happening. Just as you highlighted in the news, amidst these developments, crucial issues like human rights and the inherent agency of individuals often become disregarded. This holds true whether in complex negotiations, the realities of war and military conflicts, or tentative ceasefire conditions. The ordinary people's significance here, regrettably, lacks any real consideration. Organizations like ours focus on drawing attention to critical issues in important political places, including Washington, D.C. Currently, the military confrontation is a leading news story in the U.S. and globally. Amidst this, Iranians are coordinating programs to connect and unify the widespread network of regime opponents, strengthening their collective impact. The attention of public opinion and the media to the profound reality actually unfolding in Iran, the central and singular focus of all these initiatives, particularly the strategic field presence specifically established in Washington, D.C., is precisely to ensure this vital understanding takes root and informs policy discussions.
How disheartened do you think many Iranians are in these post-war circumstances, unsure of their nation's path? Many loved ones have paid exceptionally heavy costs, sacrificing lives, freedom, or economic stability. Considering this disillusionment and sacrifice, how much harder or easier is it to gather Iranians for protests now compared to the fervor during the January protests? Have conditions fundamentally shifted?
Basically, due to its diversity and colorfulness, the Iranian community places a difficult responsibility on the shoulders of coordinators, organizations, and political movements to bring them together despite a variety of political views and ideological factions. And well, because of the ups and downs we're seeing now, as you also said in the news, Mr. Trump might take a stance in the morning, then hours later that stance changes, and tomorrow a third different stance is taken. That's why, in this evolving situation, it could naturally have significant effects on the specific form of our struggle and the vital presence of people both inside and outside the country. It is therefore a crucial duty for organizations like ours to continuously maintain and preserve this vital connection. This also highlights why the type of messages, messaging, and slogans are critically important. They must emphasize that a struggle remains an ongoing matter and a sustained political marathon, not necessarily our final presence or ultimate form of struggle. This collective effort must persistently continue. In a situation where people, especially, are facing issues like rent, the ever-increasing prices of goods, the problem of unemployment, a wave of unemployment, all of these mean the Islamic Republic isn't focused on welfare and solving the crises of livelihood, economic, and political issues. That's why this continuous presence needs to continue, and it's always been this way everywhere in the world, among all nations. Field demonstrations, street presence have always been able to have their effects. Anyway, it's an effort to draw public attention, media attention, and their pressure on politicians and local governments.
Thank you, Siamaka Ram, political analyst and lecturer at Harrisburg University and coordinator of this rally, joining us from Washington. Minutes ago, the 2026 World Cup officially kicked off with the opening match between Mexico and South Africa, a historic tournament held for the first time with 48 teams and co-hosted by the US, Canada, and Mexico, earning the title of the largest World Cup in football history. In this edition, 104 matches will be held in 16 different cities, and the final of these competitions will be in a stadium in New Jersey, USA, to determine the new champion of world football. My esteemed colleague, Reza Mohaddes, has joined us via phone line from vibrant Mexico City, Mexico. Unfortunately, our video connection isn't working as expected. Instead of Reza's image, we're currently seeing live footage of enthusiastic World Cup fans gathered globally, enjoying the games. Reza, please tell us about the palpable atmosphere there on this exciting first day of the World Cup Games.
Arda, as you also mentioned, it was just minutes ago that with a whistle of the Brazilian referee, the 2026 World Cup competitions, which is the largest World Cup in history with 48 teams, and with the match between the national football teams of Mexico and South Africa kicked off in the historic Azteca Stadium, a very, very memorable stadium. I can tell you right now, it's like 1:07 p.m. here, and since 6 a.m. when we arrived and set up outside Azteca Stadium, it's just packed with fans and enthusiasts of the Mexico team here. While a handful, indeed a very small number of South African fans were also here, their presence is completely overshadowed. It's not just the atmosphere here outside the stadium that's electric. Throughout Mexico City itself, the passion is palpable. I can tell you, Mexican people and fans are universally dressed in vibrant green, proudly wearing their national team's jerseys, and they're utterly beside themselves with excitement for today's match. Right now, as I speak to you, we're just outside the stadium, where thousands upon thousands of jubilant fans of the Mexican national football team, residents of Mexico City, have converged. Their collective energy is incredible. They've gathered here, celebrating and dancing. A little further away, we're seeing these Mexican fans again, who are also here. Mexico City has been declared a public holiday today due to the opening match. Leaving that aside, the protest gathering of these families of disappeared Mexicans also managed to get themselves near Azteca Stadium. Despite the strict security measures in place, they also got themselves there, wanting to use this opportunity to perhaps make their protest heard by the international community. Thousands of journalists from different parts of the world are here, covering the World Cup competitions. They seized this opportunity by gathering here, and today we witness a considerably large assembly. A significant presence stands before them, possibly officials or a central display, bolstered by police. However, a major headache remains tomorrow's truly exorbitant ticket price. This astronomical cost has regretfully brought tears to many devoted fans during this World Cup edition, severely impacting their experience. As I stood here observing the crowds, it was evident that many fans passing by, particularly those making their way into the stadium, possessed tickets acquired through corporate sponsors. I made an effort to converse with several individuals who spoke English, inquiring about their ticket expenditures. Consistently, they reported having spent between $1,000 and $1,200 for their entry. My own personal search for affordable tickets directly from FIAS, the most economical option I could currently locate for a single admission, was approximately $1,500, highlighting the steep prices prevalent in the market.
Yes, Reza, I apologize. Your voice quality, unfortunately, isn't very good. It's understandable, too, considering the huge crowd near the stadium. Phone lines usually don't work well in these situations. But I think we got the gist of Reza Mohadis's message from Mexico City, Mexico, in these early hours of the 2026 World Cup Games. In response to the escalation of tensions in the Persian Gulf, the EU foreign policy chief says he has discussed recent developments with Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister of the Islamic Republic. Kaya Kallas has warned that a return to a full-scale war in the region would have a heavy cost for all countries, and the diplomatic path still remains the best way out of this crisis. Our correspondent, Ali Hassanpour, has joined us from Berlin. Ali, I suppose, at least compared to Mr. Trump, the Europeans' approach has more or less been clear and evident from the beginning that they are pursuing diplomacy to get out of this crisis.
Exactly, Fardad. As you said, we had a lot of reactions today, and they can actually be divided into two sections, political and economic. On the political level, Friedrich Merz, the German chancellor here in Berlin, in his speech in the country's parliament, once again emphasized support for a diplomatic solution, just as you mentioned. And he said that, well, the German government is still trying for a political resolution to this crisis, so that this crisis is actually resolved through diplomacy. Merz also reiterated Germany's readiness to participate in securing the Strait of Hormuz, of course, provided that, well, we know the necessary conditions for such participation are also met. He also said that, from Berlin's perspective, Iran must permanently and verifiably halt its nuclear program. And he added, regarding Israel's security, he said that the security of Israel and the entire region, including the Persian Gulf countries, must become a security guarantee. The security of Israel and the entire region, including the Persian Gulf countries, must become a security guarantee. Because, well, according to him, without these conditions being met, no lasting peace will form in the region. Italy also reacted. Giorgia Meloni, Italy's prime minister, took a stance, and she also said that if the Islamic Republic shows its readiness for negotiations, then Europe should also get ready to reduce the pressures. But if, he said, on the other hand, he warned that if Tehran continues to actually threaten the freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, and also actually wants to support its proxy groups, then the European Union must impose more sanctions against the Islamic Republic.
Thank you, Ali Hassanpour, my colleague from Berlin, for being with us tonight, and thank you for being a dedicated viewer of tonight's 24 program. You can also rewatch the complete program a bit later on Iran International's YouTube channel.